John Mudd. I'm the chair of this homeless and housing meeting for the Midtown South Community Council, and we welcome everybody here. If Charisma, you'll watch a chat for us, and if anybody else wants to join in, if they see some questions pertinent, please sing out. Sometimes I get a little focus on the meeting. So we're here together to share knowledge and resources to identify the problems and find solutions to the homelessness and housing crises. As far as the policy update, we talked a little bit about oversight, lack of oversight and housing opportunities. We're in a serious situation. We all know that, who's somewhat involved even. Charisma, you want to recap anything? You don't have to get too personal if you like. And do you want to recap anything for the policy meeting?
No, not really. What I did want to say is that they don't want people sleeping on the streets, or don't want people, they want people to go into the shelter systems, but I feel that they should properly house us so that those problems will not come up.
Yeah. You want to explain that a little bit again? Okay.
People don't want to go into the shelters and to the systems because it's not ran properly.
Yeah. Okay. And we talked a little bit about that earlier.
You can't barely find housing, regular housing.
Right. And we talked about a little bit about that during the policy meeting, and that's what resulted in a sad situation, your death of your son, and sorry about that. Okay. All right, that's the progress report. We're working on our new website. We're making a little progress. We haven't really signed with a web designer, but we do have a tech person that's helping, that will help migrate and change the site. If anybody has a web designer, they want to give me their contact, I'll explore working with them. The healthcare Medicare committee, what we've done is we pulled all the health issues out of the homeless and housing issues. They do intersect, housing is health, and health is having housing. So it just got to be a little bit much. What we did, we connected with some people that are really diehard advocates, some well-known people. And they wanted to push for a nationwide. It's a bit to take on. We were looking for health issues on the ground where they intersect with the homeless and housing. But when someone walks in your door with a lot of clout, you can't really say no. So we've been having these meetings and trying to progress that and trying to build a coalition. We've been pretty active about it for the past couple of months. Wendell Potter has lent his lobbying expertise and has been involved. Robert Henley, who's a prolific writer, and he runs Work Bites, and he's putting a lot of news out there, and he has a way of bringing everything together to what the central problem is. So and if anybody ever wants to join that meeting, please sing out, just put your name in the chat, and I'll be happy to put you on that e-list. We're having one Wednesday, as far as so feel free to I'm waiting to invite the public into it until we get a little bit more organized, but if you want to be there, you're more than welcome. The Bernardo, there's some good news there. Bernardo has said that their development plans is going to be put on hold somewhat. Comrie, Senator Comrie, said the deal was dead. The deal is dead. He's been on one of the committees that's has to go through to get approval, and So we've been at those hearings, we've testified, we've been, lobbying him, we've been writing letters, articles. I think most of you might know about that situation. Bernardo is a huge, just to put in context, in case someone's here that doesn't, it's a huge corporate developer, and they want to build their river-to-river commercial, sort of build it like the Hudson River, from all in throughout Midtown, the Penn area. So we have a hearing with CB5 is putting on a hearing tomorrow. It's in the newsletter. I'm sure you've seen it. If not, let me know. But we want to push to move the Madison Square Garden. If we move the Madison Square Garden, it will open up the subway system, and right now it feels like a cavern, a tunnel. And if we open that up and put some green spaces in there, it'll be better for us. And my hopes is to push for housing. Layla from CB5 is doing a community push on development. I'm planning on working with her and getting behind that, and that's where could use a lot of help. We need to build a development plan that's for people, and I think if we really get behind this and we speak our mind and we push for it, we could maybe move development in a different direction. And we need to build a well-rounded community with housing, and not just housing, affordable housing. And so if you want to be involved and want more information, please reach out to me. Special introductions. Rob has I think we have time to squeeze this in real quick. Let's see. Do we, I know Danielle is out today. Nicole, I didn't see her on. And any elected officials here today? Rue, are you here today?
I am.
Oh, Rue.
Happy New Year, everyone. I missed last meeting. It's been crazy here at Help NYC. I'm Rue Parkin, for those who don't know, the Executive Director of Help NYC. We don't have much to report this month. Food assistance citywide is up 135% traffic share on our website. That is the highest jump in the last 5 years. So it's kind of concerning of what's going on out there. We haven't changed any marketing or our digital outreach, so we're not sure why that is such a huge jump. It usually raises anywhere between 30 and 40% a month, but not this much in a month. Also, we have officially launched the Resource Navigator on all of the links in NYC. If you know those little towers that are on the sidewalks that replaced all the phone booths that used to be there, you just click on the tablet, hit resources, and then hit Help NYC, and it will be brought to an immediate web page where you can get immediate resources through our Resource Navigator program. Upcoming events, we are having Aware. We're starting a new series of events called Aware. Our first event is here in the Bronx. It's going to be up in Pelham Bay at Destinations Tomorrow's event space. These events are mainly for community engagement. We're planning on having an Aware event in every borough twice this year. For the Manhattan one, we are currently looking for a space. We're hoping to have it in July or August. This event is geared towards people who have systemic trauma accessing or disconnecting from services in their community. So we're looking for organizations that can provide on-the-spot triage and on-the-spot appointment scheduling. And that appointment has to be scheduled within a week of the event. So in other words, a medical provider could come in and bring their scheduling team and get people connected to care on the spot. And this is our pilot project to establish radical care villages across the city. So we're going to see how this works. And then in the coming years, try and do a radical care village every month as weather permits. And if you're not sure what a radical care village is or radical hospitality village is check out the organization Lava May. We're going to be working with Lava May to do this. They started this in California, and they provide technical support to organizations across the country. And we're going to try and do it here. And we have our garden party on May 23rd, and we had a MPOX research roundtable because the city ended their response. And it was a very successful response. We have less than 1 case a day average in New York City. We held a research roundtable that the White House came to and made a presentation about the national response. And then DOH MH came and did a presentation on the New York response. And then we had NYU Langone, Columbia Medical Center, and the AIDS was it AIDS Alliance? Oh, I forgot the name of it. It's not the AIDS Alliance, but and that recording is available. We highly, anyone who is thinking about getting the Mpox vaccine or has had the first dose but not the second dose, we would highly encourage you to enroll in a paid study. What they have found so far is that those who got the smallpox vaccine in the 50s, before they stopped giving the smallpox vaccine, have actually higher immunity now than someone who has immunity a year out from the Mpox vaccine, from the smallpox vaccine. So if you want to get vaccinated and get the Mpox vaccine, there is no requirements besides age for it. And also, it's a double header. So if you get the quote unquote Mpox vaccine, the Genos vaccine, you're actually protected from smallpox and Mpox. So because it's actually the smallpox vaccine. So I'll put these links in the chat. Thank you guys. Sorry I wasn't here the last 2 months. It's been crazy, and it's great to see everyone. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks for being here, Rue. And I like the idea of your village thing. That's really good. That's super to have the actually services right there and taking action. So many times we do events and we give out information, but it's good to really have actions while we're doing these events. I'm just going to take a couple more. We can get back to introductions because I want to give Rob as much time as he needs. He's been traveling around and he's probably needs a little sleep. But let me take one more. I think, and it is, let's see, I think we have Chris, I think you have a time problem.
Yes, yes, I appreciate. I'm Chris Policano. I'm here today with Tom Ferrugia. We're with the Broadway League, and we have spent the last. There's a proposal to put a casino in Times Square. We've been reaching out to community groups. Julie Campanelli at the Hell's Kitchen Block Association suggested I reach out to John. John suggested I come here today and be introduced. We are opposed to this proposal for a casino. We think that the promises made by folks who want to put up casinos, especially in the heart of the city, in the heart of Times Square, is that the economic benefits aren't there, and that we think it will affect the character of the community. Now, Times Square is obviously was hit hard by the pandemic. Businesses are coming back, and we think that this is going to be a negative, not a positive, in the community. Rue Parkin, thank you for telling us that you worked at the Broadway League. More power to you, sir. So I'm here to make the introduction and to say that we are looking for community support, that we are building a coalition focused on letting it be clear to public officials that there is not support for this proposal, and we're looking for your support, the group support, and hope that you'll join us.
Chris, we have,
Tom, I know you're there. If you want to say a few words, that would be great. Or not.
Chris, you talking to me?
Yes, yes. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the time. Chris, I think, said it all. I'm Tom Ferruccia. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs with the Broadway League. Chris and I and a bunch of others on our team have been working on this for quite a while. And I just really want to take a second to highlight something that Chris said about community support. A major component of where the decision is going to be made about where this casino is ultimately going to land in the city will be based strongly on whether the community thinks it's a good idea to have that facility. And again, we can share more information with you. We can share studies with you, anything that you think might be important. But the historically placing a casino in the middle of a high activity, high business, high rent area does not really do anything other than siphon off the economy from what's already there. It doesn't significantly add any improvement. Plus, I know we've been talking to CB5 and they are concerned about what effect a casino might have on some of the low income housing in the area, particularly the residents who are particularly vulnerable community and vulnerable to gambling. So that's all I wanted to say. The community support or lack of support for the casino is going to be a very significant factor in determining where these casinos end up. So anybody in the community who can publicly say that they do not think the casino will be helpful or beneficial or overtly say they don't want one would be tremendously helpful.
Tom, I would love to, I don't want to get too deep into this. I think it's worth an agenda item to discuss. We did have a short little discussion about it a few months ago, and it is something to really consider. And we are interested in development because the development or the way the city development, way the city policy on development is just all wrong. And I'd love to hear Rob's opinion on this real quick, and then, but I'd love to see you guys come back for an agenda item and for a discussion, because we've been battling this expansion in Midtown with the Bernardo development for over 2 years now, and it is important. Any thoughts, Rob?
I guess I would just, from a development perspective, it directly bumps heads with building affordable housing, right? They're looking to bring in a different group of people, right? So it's going to change the design of a community. It's going to change the people that live in that community. So I agree with everybody. It needs to be pushback, right? Certain people are going to be forced out, and those forces become very strong. When you start to collect money, when profit is your ultimate motive, there's a lot of collateral damage. That's the bottom line. Profit is like a drug, and sometimes the urge to have that drug is never satisfied. The drug of profit very rarely gets satisfied, so you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So I like to explain it that way because it gives people, a different perspective, right? It's not in those complicated financial terms. Just think of profit as a drug, man, and the urge to have that drug is never satisfied, but it leaves a lot of collateral damage behind it.
Yeah. One other thing I'd like to ask Chris and Tom before we set this aside. Okay, you're behind the theaters, of course, all the economy around the theaters and tourism, correct?
Right.
Okay,
right.
so
Broadway League is the trade association of the theaters, Broadway theaters, both in New York City and theaters across the country. Yeah. So your goal is pretty clear. We've had theaters here for a while. You're about commerce and theater and that sort of thing, and that would, of course, that shapes the audience, and in a way, I think you could probably see how theater and the commerciality of that area, Broadway and so forth, shapes everything around it. And then the communities lie on the outside,
And you can see how difficult it's been for communities, because what they want to do is continue expansion of commercial. So you can see where the theater is like draws people to the area. That's a given. You got your in Madison Square Garden, people draw there. So we can shape the Madison Square Garden, put that anywhere, people will be drawn to that. And then if you put the gambling and so forth, we open that door up, it will shape the whole area even more. And I know that's what your push is about. Can you see your way, saying all that, can you see your way of help reciprocating about for a push to build a real community around, say, the Penn area, around the outskirts, around limiting maybe the growth of this commercial, like say if they don't build it there, they're going to look to build the casino somewhere else, and I think they have like 2 or 3 spots they're looking at. Am I right?
They're looking at now a number of spots across the city, and I think in every borough. And I don't, I certainly want to say that we are interested in understanding what the concerns are that you have and understanding your issues better. I just want to make it clear that we're very narrowly focused on this issue, this one issue of a casino in Times Square is not going to help any of the communities around Times Square or any of the businesses or any of the theaters. I mean,
well, I agree with you, Chris.
Okay.
Chris, I do agree with you, but what I want you to think about going away with,
Sure.
to think about not just thinking about your specific area, think about our city as a whole. And that's something we can pick up and discuss on the agenda item. So again, I don't want to belabor that. So if that's something you'll consider, we'll have you back and have a real deep discussion about it.
Okay, well, I thank you for inviting me to this. I look forward to a further conversation, and I thank you all, and may the force be with you all.
Thanks, Chris. I hope you stick around. Okay, so as far as the other introductions, we'll get back to this. We have some updates. I think Alex had some updates, and we might have some updates from Open Hearts. I want to get to Rob because his time is limited, and I want to afford him as much time that he needs and for questions as well. Rob, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you, John. And thank you to everybody on the call for your patience. If you heard the back and forth between myself and John, I'm traveling back after having been in India for 10 days. I had an adventuresome trip back home. I left Delhi on Sunday morning, and I arrived last night at JFK about 10:30. And that was a trip by way of Delhi to Dubai, to Milan, Italy, to New York City, finally. So I'm going on about 3 hours sleep, 4 hours sleep, but I'm always interested in what this group does. So why was I in India? I think this will be important to this group. And I don't know if Rue is still here, but maybe a connection that he wants me to make for some upcoming events. But I was invited by a group called the Street Medicine Institute. These are medical professionals from around the world who bring healthcare to homeless people living on the streets. And this happens in many cities around the world. It started with some work Mother Teresa and others were doing in India. India has high rates of TB, and many of the folks were focused on eliminating TB on the streets of India, which is still a problem. And, I learned a lot from this group, some fantastic individuals, anywhere from actual doctors to people like physician's assistants. Obviously, I need sleep. I can't even say physician. And people who are actually nurses, right? Delivering medical care. And I thought it was interesting. A husband and wife, Corinne and Brett, are in LA. They don't even have an office. They have a SUV loaded with medical supplies. Corinne works out of USC in her day job, and they just go out on the street at night and deliver medical care to folks. So I thought it was a fantastic group. The reason why they invited me is basically, we all know, we say here, healthcare is a human right. So they never saw their work framed in human rights framing. And they were kind of leery of themselves speaking to homeless people when none of them had actually been homeless. This is a challenge we find in advocacy and people who are delivering direct services. It can be problematic, so you have to walk on eggshells there of how you approach it. But some of these folks have been doing this work for years. A couple of names that you guys should take note of and look up. I don't go deep into it here, but the leader of this group, Dr. Jim Withers, is out of Pittsburgh. I would ask you guys to look up his background. He's been doing this work since the 80s. And then I got to spend 10 days with a Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Harsh Mander, out of India, who was just an exceptional gentleman, a philosopher, all those good things. You know, he was a male version of Mother Teresa. I had an incredible week with him and his family. But I think the work they do is powerful. I think it relates to a lot of the work that Help NYC does, and just listening to Rue say what they're looking for. I think, Rue, you might want to make a direct connection with this group, and we can talk about that offline. So I think, I'm not sure if folks, there is that kind of work in New York City, but I don't think it's as focused as much as it is at other places outside of New York. And that's because we have access. We're in a progressive city where there is some access to healthcare. It's not the best, but it is more than other places. So the other challenge I had, and I mentioned this earlier, and there's some back and forth in the chat. You know, I want to be clear about this. I think everybody that knows me knows I'm formerly homeless. I spent 2.5 years on the streets of Miami and 10 months in the New York City homeless shelter. It wasn't the best part of my life. I don't want to ever have to go through that again. I understand what people have gone through and what people are going through when they do it. So I'm not a promoter of living on the street. That offers some challenges to me, right? And this is where I'm coming from when I say the right to stay on the street. I totally understand the argument being made about shelters. I want to make this specific argument. As somebody who has lived on the streets, it's not something I desire to ever have to go through again. I did it for 2.5 years. I stayed in the hot sun in Florida. It's not desirable. So it's not something that I promote. I also believe that it is mutually exclusive from the right to housing. I believe that everybody has a right to housing, and I think those two things can coexist. And I'll just say, during my time at Picture the Homeless, I struggled a lot with this when they wanted to intentionally do sleep outs. You know, my response was, I can't do that, folks. I had to do it for 2.5 years. I'm not trying to do it to set any example of any, you know, it wasn't fun for me. So I don't want to replicate that again. So I struggle with that a little bit, and I just wanted to put that out there so folks understand the position I'm coming from. It is a tough one. I understand people have rights and rights to make their own decision, and you'll never hear me publicly promote against people's right to do that. But personally, you won't hear me publicly say I'm for somebody's right to stay on the street. Let me phrase it that way. It's a little bit of a weird position, but I want people to understand where I'm coming from. So I'll take a couple of questions after I explain the other reason why I'm talking on the phone today. So we had a visit just before I left from India on February 16th from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, the executive director, Jeff Olivet, and the regional director, Nichelle Carver, were in New York City for a series of conversations around homelessness and understanding conditions here in New York. For those who don't know, the USICH, as they're called for short, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, was started in the Obama administration in 2010 with the goal of ending homelessness in 10 years. About midway through that process, they understood that they were up against it. Their problem was bigger than anybody had realized. So they took a step back and they started to focus on veterans homelessness, of which they did a good job. So some folks on this call, like Charisma, and I see Philip Malbranch here, will understand. We've heard the term BASH vouchers a lot in those conversations. And those vouchers were Section 8 vouchers that were specific towards veterans with low thresholds for getting in housing. Around the country, they did a good job once they focused on that. But now the U.S. Interagency Council has really reorganized itself. So instead of 30 governmental agencies being involved, it's down to 19. They have new goals. They have a new strategic plan called All In, which I will put that plan in the chat in a minute. That plan is to focus on ending homelessness by the year 2035, but with a 2-year immediate goal of reducing homelessness by 25% around the country. So going back, Jeff Olivet and Michelle Carver were here. They were here for a series of talks with different groups. There was a big roundtable discussion that was held at the WIN agency, Women in Need, for half that day on the 16th. And then the other half of the day, I set up a series of meetings with them, and the Safety Net Project was one group they met with. They also met with Jessica Katz, our New York City Chief Housing Officer. And then we ended the day with a meeting at Urban Pathways with people with lived experience and some of the staff there to talk about the work that they do. I think in all of the talks, they heard a lot of similar problems. So those problems were just reinforced in the different groups that they talked with. I think they are very concerned. They're particularly concerned about the approach the city has taken to bringing people with mental disabilities off the street and some of the initiatives that the mayor has. I will say that we can't expect this agency to bring financial support to the issue. That's not what they're about. What they are about is influence on Capitol Hill and influence within individual organizations. So when I say individual organizations, I mean like HUD, like Health and Human Services, like the Department of Justice with respect to criminalization. So if we think of it in terms that way, they're very influential on policy with respect to that. And I'll take some questions before I make one final statement. I think it's important, especially those folks with lived experience like myself, like Charisma, and like Philip, to constantly put ourselves in those spaces. But I think it's also important for us to try to think through solutions when we get people like that, because they respect our thought of solutions. One of the things that I wish had gone a little bit better, let me phrase it that way, that people, instead of just presenting the problems, would have come up with some solutions for some of those problems. But we will have time for better planning in the future. They both promised me that they got a lot out of the meetings and that they want to come back. And my hope is that when they do come back, that we can have some type of bigger event and maybe an all-day event. And I think Jeff and Michelle are open to that. The line of communication has been direct. And personally, I want to thank the policy director for the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. Her name is Marcy Thompson. I met Marcy about 10 years ago when the USICH was started, and the National Law Center in DC had asked me to participate in a focus group with them. Marcy knew of my work in the continuum of care in New York, and she stayed in contact with me. And she was the one that pointed Jeff and Michelle in my direction. So there's a real keen interest inside that organization to hear from people with lived experience and, a little bit of a direct challenge to my comrades, only because I know them so well. Charisma and Philip, step up to the plate. Come on, we need you. So I'll stop there and take a few questions and answers, but I'll let John monitor the time. So if anybody has questions, I'm here.
I see Rue's hands up.
Hey, Rob, I'm jealous that you went to India. That's one of my bucket list places. Two things I wanted to say is Dr. O'Connell, I put the link about the story that they just did. He just wrote his own book recently. And Philip also mentioned Dr. O'Connell. Dr. O'Connell was a family friend of my mother's when she was in medical school, and he does amazing work. Unfortunately, here in New York, we don't have any established street medicine clinics. Health and hospitals will go around every once in a while and do outreach in the streets, but it's more triage in the street and then an appointment or a slip where to call. It's really ineffective. Right. California does this amazingly in San Jose and San Francisco and on Skid Row in LA. Lava May is part of that effort as well. I really think we should have a true street medicine contingent here in New York, where doctors are actually treating on the street like they do in other cities. The other thing is
True. I think Doctors Advocacy Group, Lee Erickson, I think it was, he was actually going out on the streets. I don't know if they expanded that. Have you been in touch with the Doctors Advocacy?
yeah, I'm on their listserv. They go out sporadically. When we talk about street medicine, we're talking about doctors that are going out full time every day of the week. That is all they do.
Yeah.
And it's a continuum of care. So they see the same doctor or the same team every time.
Whatever happened with the before this mayor came to office, they were doing they had the pilot, and they were sending out psychologists and psychiatrists.
Thrive,
I'm sorry.
the Thrive Initiative.
No, this was separate. They embedded some medical
CTI,
people.
baby.
I'm sorry.
CTI.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that sounds. Yeah.
Community access, I think, was involved in that.
Yeah, CCIT.
Not keep it
So
up.
yeah, so CCIT is still active. Their advocacy, they weren't doing direct outreach. They were advocating for the CAHOOTS model that was established in Portland, Oregon, which would put a peer, a caseworker, and an EMT with no
Right.
police involvement in the crisis calls. They have since abandoned that. CCIT is now looking to add a peer to the current Be Heard and expand that program across the city. Because right now, Be Heard isn't across the city right now. It's only in the Bronx, and I believe there's a team in Queens. There might be one in Manhattan as well, but CCIT is still active. Matter of fact, they have a couple rallies coming up to expand it. I can put you, Jordan Rosenthal is now in charge of that. Carla Rubenowitz has retired. And Jordan Rosenthal is the new advocacy coordinator at Community Access. And it might be worthwhile for this body to reach out to through Jordan. And I can make that connection. Let me write that down.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. So that's the street medicine here in New York that I know of. I know that there's no full-time organization out there doing in the streets. Care for the Homeless goes out every once in a while, but they want people to come to the clinic rather than provide treatment and care on the street itself. And also it's a challenge in our climate because we have such finicky weather and everything, but it is successfully done in Ottawa and Montreal as well.
That's right.
Montreal has very effective street medicine and psychiatry on the street. So
Rue, I'm hearing you totally. And this is why I think connecting you with Dr. Jim Withers is a good idea. He's nationally, he started the Street Medicine Institute. And I said a lot of the things, I didn't know as much detail as you knew, but I said, the best we have is the Health and Hospitals Corporation, right? And that's,
Health and Hospitals goes out a
Right.
couple times a year.
Yeah, Project Renewals Van and all that, but it's sporadic. Right? These are folks like I was so impressed with Corrine and Brett. They have an SUV loaded with medical supplies, and every night at 6:00, they're out on the street, right? And a lot of these folks have their 9 to 5, and then they go out, right? There's another young man that works with Jim, Eddie, who is he went to school in Jersey and he went to Rutgers, Camden, so he understood the need, right? If you know anything about Camden, and he's dedicated. So I think this approach is good.
City Relief is out there as well.
Right. So the challenge, I think, and this is where I think some of the governments are going to think like I do. They wanted to invite Jeff Olivet to the meeting. And I think it was good that Jeff didn't come because Jeff's role is to eliminate street homelessness, right? And I think that bumps against delivering that medical care. Not that delivering the medical care is wrong. I want to be clear about that. But there's a thought process here in the US. As long as you keep bringing services to people on the street, they're going to get comfortable there and you're never going to end it. So I think he would have run into that. So I think that's a larger conversation that those of us who work in advocacy and direct services to homeless need to think about. How do you get around that?
And that's true to a point, but the research proves otherwise. And there was a HUD research on the Housing First model
Right.
back that community access actually created in the 80s with their first building with Governor Court, that yes, bring the outreach to the street. And it looks like up front, it's a lot of work and it's not moving anywhere. But what that does for people living on the street, and it did for myself, I was on the streets in New York for 2 years, 2006 to 2008. And what that does is that it builds trust and confidence in people who have systemic trauma accessing services here in the city. And as they build relationships with these care providers, they'll slowly come into the clinic. They'll slowly meet with a case manager. They may consider going into a shelter. However, I do disagree with you, Rob, is that no one should be forced into a house. That is the definition of colonialism. That's what happened to my ancestors as First Nations. They should have that home available to them if they so wish to utilize it.
And this is what, to be clear, I never said anybody should be forced into a home. I never said that.
Okay.
This is why I'm walking on eggshells with this issue, because sometimes people will interpret what I say. What I try to do is use my own lived experience. For me in Miami, that effing sun on me every day, yo, I'm not surviving this crap, man. I got to get off the streets.
Yep.
So sometimes there are factors that may interfere with your ability to reason clearly and not make good decisions, right? But you will never hear me say people should be forced. This is why I'm kind of quiet about my position, because I know it's easy to misinterpret what I said, and not saying that you misinterpret, but I wanted to be clear, right? I believe that those two things contradict one another when I say everybody has the human right to a home. Personally, this is how I feel. But then I'm also saying everybody should have the right to be on the street if that's why I won't speak publicly about it. I'm very careful when I talk about this issue.
I believe housing is a human right. And that also housing, a home can look like a street corner. But under the housing first model, anyone who is on the street should have an apartment assigned to them that they can go to and come from as they wish. There's this, I'll post this video in the chat, but there's a great TED talk about the HUD study for the housing first model. From this gentleman who did not believe in any harm reduction or any housing first. You get sober, you get a job, and you get an apartment. And he talks about how his life changed because he participated in this HUD study for the. So I'll put that in the chat.
I'm a big believer in housing first. I'm very close to the model in Finland where they basically eliminated it and they did it using housing first. Finland does have a big difference though, folks. They own, the city of Helsinki owns 70% of the land, makes it a lot easier to build housing. Thank you, Rue. I will reach out to you separately to connect you with Jim. I'm going to have a conversation with Jim, but I think it's something that'll support the work that you're doing. I see Charisma has a hand up and I want to try to answer that and try to stay awake and be as functional as I can because I'm fading, man. I feel like a boxer in the 12th round. Go ahead, Charisma.
I don't think it's about, it's not about whether people want to be on the streets or be in a shelter. It's about the state and the city and the government taking precedence to put up the proper things for people to navigate themselves in which their needs fit. If you want people to go in the shelter system, you got to make that shelter system better, more appealing than the streets. That means you have to work with them properly, house them properly, and get good caseworkers to work with them and dissolve their issues so they can move forward. In the shelter system, you're just moving backwards. You're not moving forward. This is the problem we have. And we're not saying we want to sleep on the streets. We're not saying we want to sleep in the shelters. We're saying we want proper housing. The shelter system has to be proper, as well as having apartments for people. Everybody don't want to be in that shelter system. Everybody doesn't deserve to go in that shelter system. You have to have housing out here for your constituents that's walking around working on your jobs that run your city.
Yeah, I think we kind of agree with the lack of oversight and so forth.
Yeah, there's no argument
Everybody
here.
looking at, oh, you need to go in the shelter. Oh, you need to do this. You need to do that. They want to drone people around and tell them where to go, but not giving them the options to have safe, proper housing
Yeah.
in all aspects, shelters, safe havens, apartments.
Yeah. Same with the prison system. We're not progressing. Definitely, we don't have the property, you know, all the properties are given up to the developers. Rob, any other comment on that?
No, I mean, listen, I don't think I disagree with any of the things I put on here, but I wanted to be clear about these two things with respect to me and how I present them. It's walking on eggshells because there are people with different opinions and different thoughts about this. But I'm never in favor of just forcing people off the street and into a home. That's not something I think about. But I have lived on the street, and I don't want to go back there. Right? It wasn't fun. As I said, I was in the hot sun in Miami, and that it would have killed me. I'll be honest with you. And thank God I was able to get away. But people have different lifestyles and adapt in different ways, and I understand that. So I'm very careful with my outwardly public presentation about this issue, knowing it's a sensitive issue. But I thank you for the time to present. I look forward to, and I just ask you all to Google Harsh Mander, Harsh. His last name is Mander, Mander. I had an incredible 10 days with this man, and in India and Rue. That was my second time there. I was blessed to go in 2016, and what a fantastic experience. Learn a lot about humbling people. I did make a commitment to the organizers that I met, because they have a really right-wing leadership there, Modi government, and even Harsh basically is, I don't want to say in hiding, but he wouldn't even go on our WhatsApp list, because he knows he's being targeted by the government. So, that's some things that we have a little bit of that here, but understanding how a man doing such good like that has to basically hide his work kind of sucks. But I learned so much in 10 days, and look forward to going back into hospitality of the poorest piece, some of the poorest people in the world. This is what I always walk away with from India, Rue, is that, places like India, people with the least treat you the best, man. And I walked away with, just seeing some of the
money does not equal happiness, and that's what India proves.
Rue, thank you, bro.
Yes, I have to run. I have an in-person meeting in downtown, so it's great to see everyone. I just want to say one more thing, is that we have a bottleneck of affordable housing here in the city, which backs up housing for those who are formerly homeless, who backs up housing for those who have mental health, everything. But what we could do to get people more off the streets and give them an opportunity is to reform the shelter system, work with DSS, get rid of the bed requirement, get rid of shelter of last record, because people get stuck into the and main chances here. I saw them earlier. I don't see them. Oh, Susanna is here. Like that shelter, I got stuck in the drop-in centers and couldn't get a bed when I was homeless. And it's still the same situation now. So if we could reform some of the policies that make the shelters unattractive, it will buy us time to get housing built. And hopefully with this New York Forward thing that the governor is pushing upstate, where they're giving tens of millions of dollars to build affordable housing, we'll find land and get out of the greedy friggin' developers here in the city. So I have to run. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Great seeing you.
Rue,
yeah.
We were years before the pandemic struck, we were working on a policy with a group about the shelters, what they need, minimums and so forth. I've been thinking about bringing that back. You want to, like, every morning prior to this meeting, you want to come together and work on that and maybe expand that to consider all the shelters
I'm
and
crazy busy with Aware right now, but send me over what you worked on and I can look at it.
okay, sounds good. And make a note.
Okay,
Rob, did I
thank
spell
you.
that?
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Rob.
Thanks, Joe.
Did I spell that right? HARSH?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Well, I guess, Rob, you need some sleep. So I think you wanted to go. Any last words?
Yeah, I just thank everybody for their patience and understanding, and I look forward to deeper conversations. We have an opportunity with people inside of the U.S. Interagency on Council on Homelessness. Let's do our best to take advantage of it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Rob.
Great. Okay, let's take a quick look at the agenda, see who we missed. Surana, I believe you're here. You're still here? Sue?
Hi, John. How are you?
Good. How are you? Any updates? Anything you want to?
Nothing new. We just have our pantry tomorrow between 2 to 3:30. So anyone could come down and get fresh fruits, vegetables, and fresh meat.
Okay, and you do that once a week, and you have your lunches and breakfast and dinner every day, correct?
Yes, the pantry is once a month, every second Wednesday, and we have 3 meals a day. Breakfast is from 6:30 to 8. Lunch is from 12 to 1:30, and dinner is from 4 to 6.
Great. You know, we delivered a lot of greens to your place. I don't know if you saw the records or anything, and they give us a letter occasionally, but they don't put how much we give, and I estimate, and we weigh it out and then we put it down. That would help us if we had a confirmation on the weight. I don't know if that's possible.
Okay, I'll ask the person that does the letter tomorrow, I'll ask her to do that.
Yeah, we're going to be expanding that upstate farm a little bit. We started late. To give a context to everybody, we have our city farm. I think you know about that. We need help. If you guys want to volunteer, if you have people that will volunteer, please let them know. We do that usually on a Friday, Saturday, if you want to be on that list. But we come together, we spruce up the garden, we plant, we harvest, and then we have lunch, and then we distribute. But what we did was we got to hold some property upstate, and we started on it late. It was close to the end of the season. We produced almost 900 pounds of food, greens, I should say. It was all greens because it was in colder months. It was September, and I think we started planting in late August, maybe. And so we only had like 6 weeks of vegetation, but it produced quite a bit. So it showed us how easy it is with just a few people volunteering. And it showed us how much we can get out of some land. And we only used a quarter of the property that was given to us. So we have access to 2 acres. So we needed support there, but we we expanded our distribution, and I think this could be really big for us. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about when I was talking about the greens we brought to Main Chance. Anything else, Sue?
No, nothing else going on. Just anyone that needs pantry food should come down tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Spread that out. Alex, you had some updates of some sort, I think.
Yes, Intro 195. The wrinkles are still being worked out between the bill's author and the 2 city council members who are sponsoring it. The authors are not the sponsors, as the case with many bills. I'm going to put the information into the chat. Really
Explain
quickly.
what the intro is.
Intro 195, yeah. So prior to Intro 195, if a tenant had the suspicion that an empty apartment either above or below or next door was causing problems, there was no way for them to report that empty apartment, because a lot of these agencies have a really infuriating policy of, if you don't live in a certain apartment, you have it's none of your business what goes on in an apartment that you don't live in. So 195 would let tenants call 311 to connect with HPD, and then HPD would tell the landlord that they have, I think, 14 days to open up the apartment for inspection, and HPD inspector will go into the empty apartment and do a checklist. It's a 12-point checklist. And so the important thing to remember is that prior to Intro 195, there was no way for a tenant to have recourse. They would just have to suffer with whatever condition. And so half of the city council, more than 26 at this point, support Intro 195. So we're really happy about that. And if you really want to get into the weeds, we can connect you to the author of the bill. It's an attorney by the name of Sam Kiera. And yeah, so I put the links in the chat for anybody who wants to know. And, you know, just really quickly, I think even John might know this, but I was actually homeless from 2005 to 2008. A city agency called HASA, it's a division of HRA. They considered me homeless because I lived with my aunt in an emergency situation for 3 years. But I just wanted to throw that in because I realized I never said that in all the times that I've come to these meetings. But yeah, so support Intro 195. If you can contact your city council member, that would be great.
Yeah, that's nice. Thanks for that revelation too, Alex. And yeah, you had mentioned it to me, but thanks for putting it out there. The housing crisis is a crisis, and it's not been treated as a crisis. There's no alarm bells ringing and everybody's coming to triage the situation. That's the problem. So we have to do it. And we have to get really focused, and we have to get and I think we have to start building our coalition around specific actions. And the thing is, we're small. Sometimes funding is lacking. We're working on building our funding base, by the way. The council is here for everybody to get involved, and we need help. And one of the we'll be talking about in the future, and we'll be having forums on. We're scheduling several forums. We're just working out the foundation for it. But one of them is committees and working with other nonprofits to make those committees work. They take a lot of nurturing and a lot of stick to it power. And it takes a lot of forward momentum. We're all busy. Sometimes it's hard to keep things together like that. But one of the committees I really believe in, and we had several discussions, and everybody really is really all seems to be all in for, but we have yet to really lay a foundation, a strong foundation, is a committee, that home improvement committee that and that looks at tenant situation, that improves tenant situation. And because we're not, these things can be really stressful, having holes in the wall, having mold in the apartments, having mice. These are real stressful situations, and the landlord wants us to move out. They don't care about keeping these things up. They'll use lots of excuses not to repair them. So this is something I think we can circumvent, and we'll be talking about it. Alex, I'm hoping Alex and I have been talking about it, and I'm looking for people to push this thing forward. But so let me know if you're interested in that. And the health committee is doing, like I mentioned before, the health committee is building. If anybody wants to be involved with that, those are two committees that we're working on right now. And besides of course, the funding and finance, and we have a lot of list of committees that we can build together if you participate. And with that, Charisma, is that a hand from before, or is that a new? Okay, I think that was from before. Okay, let me see if there's anything else to mention on the agenda. Anybody else with introductions or new people? I want to make sure all the new people are welcomed. Anybody else out there?
I should probably introduce myself.
Sure.
John.
Hi,
I'm
Philip.
Philip Malbranche. I'm a board member of Care for the Homeless, and I'm a long-term member of the CAB there, the Consumer Advisory Board. I have the long-term experience of homelessness and write on some of these issues, homelessness and related issues. Facebook is my platform, and I'm glad to be here again. I don't come often, I'm afraid, but that's part of my issues and my story. But I'm encouraged by the work that John's doing with all of you. I think that there are important issues. The development problems of Midtown interest me because I have a sociology degree, so I look at it from that perspective, as well as from that of a person with the experience of homelessness. And actually, I've written on some of that. Recently, I wrote a post on architecture and planning and so forth. So I'm glad to hear the talk here and the discussion, the international news. I lived abroad myself, so I'm interested in international affairs too. So I agree, John, and I'm grateful to be here today.
Philip, anything you write, make sure you alert me because I'll put it in our newsletter.
Thanks. I write almost daily on Facebook. People are welcome to go to my Facebook page. It's public stuff, most of it.
But you're giving me a job to go and do. So just
if there's something I can send you, I'd be happy to do that. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Philip. I appreciate that. It's really hard for me to keep up with things sometimes. Danielle, you're here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Mindess. I'm the project director at Midtown Community Court. It's nice to be here again and hear from all of you. I will only just mention that we run Community First, which is a homeless outreach program in the Times Square area specifically, and we really focus on that relationship and trust building aspect of the work and try to meet people where they're at, provide what it is they are looking for that day, grow longer term relationships and connect people with the services that they are hoping for and looking for. So we're running that in Times Square, like I said, but always looking for opportunities, funding opportunities, frankly, to expand that work throughout Midtown.
I have an idea, Danielle.
Sure.
Did you hear about the medicine outreach and the medical outreach? Did you hear what we were discussing earlier?
I did, yeah.
Maybe, and we have a partner, Isaac, who has a operation going on uptown on Broadway. You know, I'm thinking he was going to give us a room. It's outfitted with computers and so forth, and we were going to run some workshops there. I have an idea that we can connect and we can bring that Community First. We can add that element. I don't know if you have it. I know you have Fountain House involved. Am I right?
We do. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were around when you started developing that program. We were Lauren Curatola. I had really was pushing that program through. And so I know you have the mental health thing going, but what about medical? Is that lacking?
We certainly see a lot of folks who are in need of medical attention, physical health care, and we have a partnership with Ryan Chelsea Clinic, and that's primarily where we make referrals for people who are willing to address
Ryan's
issues. But I'm very happy to have conversations, and I would bring our program coordinator for Community First into it because she knows better than I do. She knows best what specifically they're seeing and what gaps there might be with our current partnerships. But we would certainly love to have that conversation and look for any ways that we can serve people in the ways that they are
Do you want, we can do this privately offline and bring it back to and see what the outcomes are, or we can have this on the agenda. But I could probably bring someone from the doctors advocacy group, and then Ryan Chelsea has been a good partner of ours. Daniel's our board member. And I know they have a van too, but they don't really do that consistent outreach like what we're talking about. It's a little different.
Okay.
I know they were, and what Rue was talking about, it's sporadic here and there, but maybe we can get these groups together and discuss an ongoing thing with your Community First program. And also, Isaac at his church has a little health, they got their medical equipment. It's sort of like what we want to replicate. It has a lot of factors that we want to do, a one-stop shop, where you have your social workers, doctors, and so forth, and housing too, housing specialists. So that's the idea, is bringing people together and actually succeeding in getting someone through the system from A to Z. And I think with the combined network, we could probably add to that program and also filter some of the people through to some solid partners. Make sense?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
do that. And like I said, I'd want to include at least one or two other folks.
Yeah.
If we're gonna get down
Cool.
to details.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so we'll work on that. All right,
Great.
cool. Thanks for being here. Anybody else before we close this meeting? I'm going to see any public concerns. We've kind of sort of integrated it, I think, but if anybody has any last minute public concerns, please speak out. Let's see. I screwed up for the past couple of months. We had Right to Counsel here, and they were supposed to do a phone banking. I'm going to see if I can make them less mad at me and come back to do that maybe. We'll skip the development initiatives. Please, if you have any topics you want to focus on, let me know. Next meeting is, of course, in April. It's April 4th. And with that, I think we're going to conclude the meeting. We didn't do too bad. We got 15 minutes. We did extend this meeting a half an hour because we've been really so jam-packed with agenda items, and appreciate you guys being here, and spread the word, and have a great day.